frequency was not a sound, but a feeling. It was the feeling of a heavy mist lifting to reveal a sunlit valley, and the knowledge that, in the end, absolutely everything is precisely as it was meant to be. For within the stone heart of the world, love is the only perennial. The heart beats on. The Stone Heart of Saint Vincent. A novel of mystery, romance, and redemption in great slaughter. Chapter 1. The Echo of 500 Years. The mist clung to the rolling hills of Great Slaughter like a shroud of grey silk, damp and unyielding. It was a morning that felt heavy with the weight of centuries, the kind of Cotswold dawn where the line between the earth and the sky blurred into a singular, melancholic silver. For Sister Boniface, standing at the arched window of her laboratory at St. Vincent's Convent, the view was bittersweet. For 500 years, this stone edifice had stood as a bastion of peace, a sanctuary for the broken, a fortress for the devoted, and, more recently, a world-class hub for forensic chemistry. Now, the air smelled of Qingjand, not the pleasant kind. It smelled of cold ink on legal contracts and the diesel fumes of progress. 500 years, she whispered, her breath fogging the ancient glass. Enduring, perennial. This be. She wasn't just reciting history. She was reciting a eulogy. The convent was being sold. The land, which had seen the rise and fall of kings, was destined to become Lord Adam Sedgwick Towers, a modern development that, in Boniface's eyes, looked more like a skeletal cage than a home. In the courtyard below, the rehearsals for the pageant were underway. Miss Thimble, the town's most anxious music teacher, was waving her baton with a frantic energy. No, Dottie! The voice of Sister Peter boomed from the makeshift stage. Music needs to flow around my words like a river, not a flood. Dottie, do remember, your cue is the Reverend Mother symbolically handing over the key. So sorry, Dottie squeaked, clutching her sheet music. I was worried I'd miss it. Sister Boniface smiled despite the ache in her chest. The pageant was Reverend Mother Adrian's easier way for the sisters to go out with their heads held high, even as they stared down the barrel of displacement. It was an odd time to celebrate, but as the Reverend Mother often said, the Lord loves a joyful noise, even in the midst of a storm. A sharp knock at the lab door broke her reverie. Inspector Sam Gillespie stood there, looking uncomfortable in his tweed jacket. Beside him was Felix Livingston, the young, earnest sergeant, who had become like a son to the sisters. Inspector Boniface greeted them, turning from the window. I assume you aren't here for a chemical analysis of the sacramental wine. Sam sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. Lord Sedgwick is here, sister, and a Mr. Panisa. They want it on stage for the speeches tomorrow. A model of our demise, Boniface noted dryly. It's progress, they say, Felix added, though his tone suggested he didn't quite believe it. They descended to the main hall, where the air was thick with tension. Lord Matthew Sedgwick, the current Earl, stood by a draped object. He looked tired, older than his years. Beside him stood Ronnie Panisa, a developer with a shark-like grin and eyes that saw only profit margins. Ah, Sister Boniface, Lord Matthew said, his voice strained. I know this is difficult. My father loved St. Vincent's dearly. I just wish, well, circumstances being what they are. Circumstances usually involve a lack of imagination. My Lord Boniface replied gently. Suddenly, the heavy oak doors swung open. A woman entered with the stride of someone who owned the world. She was dressed in sharp London fashion, a camera slung over her shoulder and a notebook tucked under her arm. Ruth, Sam gasped. Ruth Penny. In the flesh, Sam, or as much flesh as a journalist is allowed these days, Ruth replied, her eyes sparkling with a familiar mischief. The room shifted. Ruth Penny was a force of nature, a woman who had left Great Slaughter to chase headlines but had never truly left the hearts of those she'd left behind. I'm working on a story, Ruth explained, ignoring the stunned silence, how the St. Vincent's development could be rolled out nationwide, a blueprint for modern living in ancient spaces. Tomorrow is about the story of this town. Miss Penny, interjected Lynn Goodwin, the council leader, who had appeared from the shadows. Not world domination. I shall be doing the unveiling. With a flourish, Lynn pulled the cloth away. The model was a glass and steel monstrosity. It sat on the ancient stone floor like an alien craft. I give you Lord Adam Sedgwick Towers, Lynn announced. Oh my, whispered Sister Peter. Progress, Panessa said, stepping forward. Like a shark, we keep moving forward, or we die. But as the group marveled or mourned over the model, a shadow fell across the doorway. A small, stooped figure in a dusty habit stood there, leaning on a wooden staff. It was Sister Helena, the legendary archaeologist who had spent half her life in the dirt of the Holy Land. You called this progress? Helena's voice was like grinding stones. You are building on foundations you do not understand. Chapter 2. The Secret in the Stone. The arrival of Sister Helena changed the atmosphere of the convent instantly. She was a woman of formidable intellect and even more formidable silence. While the other sisters were busy packing linens and prayer books, Helena was seen wandering the chapel with a magnifying glass and a notebook, her lips moving in silent prayer, or perhaps a secret calculation. Sister Boniface found her later that afternoon in the north transept, staring at a bronze plaque dedicated to the late Earl. Sister Helena Boniface said softly, "I've read all your papers. Your work in Ephesus was extraordinary." Helena turned, her eyes sharp behind thick lenses. All right. That's enough bootlicking. I've admired your work, too. Your forensic deductions. You have an eye for the small things that God hides in plain sight." Golly, Boniface blushed. "But why are you here now? You examined this chapel years ago." Helena leaned in, her voice a conspiratorial whisper. "The Lord works in mysterious ways. Sister, did I miss something then, perhaps? Or perhaps it wasn't time for it to be found. But now, with the wolves at the gate, we shall speak further at dinner." But dinner would never come for Sister Helena. The evening was a blur of activity. The town was buzzing with the news of the sale. At the local pub, the Stag and Hound, the talk was divided between those who welcomed the new jobs and those who felt the soul of great slaughter was being sold for 30 pieces of silver. In the dark room of the convent, Peggy, the young civilian assistant at the police station, was helping Sister Boniface develop some archival photos. "I'm going to miss this, Sister," Peggy said, her hands stained with developer fluid. "The cases, the mysteries, the way you always see the truth." "The truth is always there," Peggy Boniface replied. "It's just that people are very good at standing in front of it." A frantic knocking interrupted them. It was Sister Peter, her face pale. "Boniface, come quickly, it's Helena." They ran to the chapel. The air was cold, smelling of extinguished beeswax and ancient dust. There, at the foot of the altar lay Sister Helena. Her staff was broken beside her. Her eyes, which had seen the wonders of the ancient world, were fixed on the vaulted ceiling. Inspector Gillespie arrived minutes later, his face set in a grim mask. He knelt beside the body, his professional detachment struggling against the personal grief of seeing a member of the St. Vincent family fallen. "Blunt force trauma to the back of the head," Sam muttered. "She never saw it coming." Boniface knelt on the other side. She didn't look at the wound yet. She looked at the habit, "Inspector, look at these flecks. An ivory-colored lipophilic compound." "Wax?" Sam asked. "Not just any wax," Boniface said, her voice trembling slightly. "From its hue and pigmentation, it is the sort utilized in a traditional Catholic pillar candle. I believe we have a killer candlestick." "An opportunistic murder," Felix noted, looking around the darkened chapel. Someone grabbed what was at hand. "But why?" Sam asked. "What could an old nun have that was worth killing for?" "She knew something," Boniface said, reaching into Helena's stiffening hand. She pulled out a crumpled scrap of paper. "She gave this to a passing postman just before. It says, in Latin," Sam said. "In the chapel, in plain sight." Chapter 3. The Ghost of the Earl. The investigation turned the convent into a crime scene, a cruel irony for a place that was supposed to be a sanctuary. Sam Gillespie sat in the small office he had set up in the vestry, looking through the list of people who had been in the building. Lord Matthew, Ronnie Panessa, Lynn Goodwin, and our own sisters. Sam listed, and Ruth Penny. She was everywhere yesterday. "Ruth wouldn't kill a nun for a story," Sam Boniface said, entering with a tray of tea. "Wouldn't she? She's ambitious, and this development of the century story is her ticket back to the big leagues." Boniface set the tea down. "We need to look at the why before the who." Helena was an archaeologist. She was looking for something, and she found it behind that plaque. They returned to the chapel. The bronze plaque for the late Earl was loose. Boniface used a small screwdriver to pry it away. Behind it was a cavity in the